All right, no hook. You read the title. You know why you're here, so let's not beat around the bush. Let's dive right into it. This is the core of Mothership, aka all you need to watch to play your first session as a player. Mothership is a sci-fi horror game that flavors cosmic horror and a cassette futurist vibe, like Alien. It can really be used to play any sci-fi horror story. In Mothership, you use percentile die. That means you roll 2 d10s, one being the tens number and the other being the ones number. It works a little different than many games. 99 is the highest you can roll and 0 is the lowest. Usually the double zeros is 100. In Mothership, you don't roll the dice every time that you want to do something. Most things that you want to do, you just do. When you roll, you check your relevant stat or save. So if we were trying to quick draw the laser pistol, we would probably look at speed. And then you try to roll under that number. Zeros and 99s always critical, and double numbers are always criticals. If you get equal to or under the number, you succeed. Over, you fail, and you take a point of stress. Stats are generally rolled when you're being proactive, and saves are rolled when you are trying to withstand something. Whenever you fail a roll, you suffer whatever consequences come from failing, and in addition, you gain a point of stress. Stress piles up, relatable. And whenever you roll a critical failure, or if something goes you roll a panic check. In order to roll a panic check, you roll 1d20, and if you roll under the amount of stress that you have, you suffer the relevant effect on the panic table. If you roll over it, you're good. That's basically it. The Warden will explain the rest as it comes up. But what is the rest? Well, would you look at that? We have 15 minutes of video left, or something. I don't know how long this is going to take. I wrote a script. I don't know how long it's going to actually end up being, but here's the skinny. What will we cover in this video? The index is going to be right over here and also down in the doobly-doo, and there will be chapters so you can skip around if you have questions. The video will not cover a couple things. One is character creation. I think I might make a video about this, in which case I will link it in the doobly-doo or zap. Safety tools, which are a must for Mothership, are not a part of this video. There's also a full list of skills I'm not going to go through. They're in the player's survival guide. Look them up. I am also not talking about the ship rules. There's a whole other book for this, and there's a reason for that. And if you want a video, comment down below and subscribe and like while you're at it. I'm also not going to go over how to prep Mothership as a Warden. The Warden's Guide does a great job of this. But if I make a video about it, it will also be down below. All right, so let's dive right into part 2, which is dice notation and roll modification. There are a couple different kinds of dice that you roll in Mothership. We already talked about the D100, that's written like this. You also roll single D10s, which are written like this, where X is the number of dice that you roll. Sometimes we roll a D10 and divide it in half to get a D5. So that would mean that 1 to 2 on the dice would be a 1, 3 to 4 would be a 2, 5 to 6 would be a 3, etc., etc., etc. You get it. You get it. You've got it. Panic die, as we talked about, are a D20, but they're not really used elsewhere. Now, Mothership also makes use of the advantage and disadvantage mechanic, which is common to D&D, and those are written like a plus, which is advantage, and a minus, which is a disadvantage. With advantage, you roll twice and take the better result. And with disadvantage, you roll twice and take the worse result. If you have both advantage and disadvantage, they cancel each other out. But if you have a bunch of different things that are stacking up to give you advantage or disadvantage multiple times, the Warden might allow or force them to stack. So you would roll 3 or 4 times and take the very worst. Or they might say that it can only be applied once. It's up to them. Now, advantage and disadvantage is one way to modify your stat checks and saves, but they can be used to modify any roll. A D10, a D5, a panic check. But they're not the only things that modify rolls. Let's talk about stat checks, let's talk about saves, and let's talk about the things that modify them. So we talked a little bit about stat checks and saves, but what are our different stats and saves that we have? Well, first off, for stats, we have strength. That is, how strong you are, but how you physically affect the world world around you, right? Closing doors, carrying your friends to safety, climbing, jumping, pushing people. Speed is getting things done fast or getting to places quickly. Intellect is like recalling stuff you know under duress, thinking through difficult problems, or inventing or fixing things. And combat is fighting for your life and all the forms that takes. Now, note there is no charisma stat here. That's because roleplay in Mothership is done just between the warden and the players. What you say is what you get. Now we have 3 saves. The first is sanity. Sanity is trying to make sense out of chaos. It is trying to rationalize an inconsistent and random universe. It's also how you cope with stress a lot of the time. Fear is like maintaining a level head when things are going wonky, or also dealing with loneliness, depression, and other like emotional struggles. Body is everything from your reflexes to your ability to withstand physical trials. That could be resisting hunger, resisting disease, or parasites. Now, your stats can be modified by advantage and disadvantage, or by your skills. There are 3 tiers of skills, each with its own different bonus. Trained skills are the simplest. You'll definitely have one of these at character creation, and they give you +10 to a roll. Then expert skills are next. The book says that in order to have an expert skill, you have the equivalent of a doctorate in that skill. They require a trained skill as a prerequisite, and they give +15. And then finally, master skills are the bleeding edge of some specialized field. They give a whopping +20, and they require a trained and an expert skill to get access to them. Now, what do I mean by +10, 15, 20? I mean that your stat or save counts as being that much higher for the purpose of that roll. So if you were trying to, say, lock a door shut without the proper key card, while the horrible thing from beyond is crawling its way down the hall, screaming in the voice of your dead crew member, Jimmy, who you've known for 3 years and who still owes you 15 credits. And why? God, why did it have to be today? Why, Jimmy, why? You'd still have to roll under 43 instead of your flat intellect of 33. It's also worth noting that the rules say that depending on what you're attempting, if you don't have the proper skill, you might be rolling at disadvantage. Brutal. That intensive a rule makes me stressed and panicked. So let's talk about stress and panic. So as I said, you gain stress every time you fail a check. Sometimes spooky stuff or terrible things will give you extra stress. Fun. Your minimum stress is 2, and some things in the game, such as certain panic check results, can send it up or send it down. The maximum stress that you can have is always 20. If you take more stress when you are already maxed out, then you take points off of a relevant stat or save. Joy! You relieve stress by resting in safety. When you get to crash out for a couple of hours, you make a rest save using your worst save. If you succeed, you can reduce your stress by the 1's digit rolled. So, for example, let's roll this. So let's say that my worst save is sanity. It's certainly my worst save. And I have a worst save of 32. So I roll and boom. Okay, whoa, on the number 32. The odds. So this would mean that I succeed because I rolled equal to or under. And that would mean that I would reduce my stress by the 2 on here because it is the 1's digit. If I rolled something different, well, an 81 would be a failure and I would gain a point of stress, but there we go. But if I got a 13, I would get 3 stress reduced because that's the 1's digit number. There we go. You get it. You got this. You can gain advantage on your rest save by turning it up a notch with a suitable leisure activity. Use your imagination. And fun note, stress also turns into experience points kind of when you have shore leave. You can find out more about that in part 10, improving your character. Panic is the result of stress. You make a panic check whenever you make a critical failure or when something goes when that happens, first off, you affect your coworkers depending on what class you are with your trauma response. For example, when a Marine freaks out, everyone goes, "Oh no, the guy with the gun is freaking out." But then you roll with the d20 on the panic table. If you roll equal to or under your stress, you fail, and you suffer whatever effect you rolled on that table. That ranges from the best result, which is an adrenaline rush, which makes you a little more competent, to the worst, which is retirement. And nothing is more likely to cause panic than combat and violence. Combat and violence in Mothership is super uber dangerous, and players are encouraged to avoid it at all costs, but chances are things are gonna get a little sweaty, and when they do, this is how it's going to go down. Time in combat is split up into about 10-second intervals that are called rounds. At the top of the round, the warden describes what's happening, you ask the questions, and then you decide what you're going to do, and the warden tells you what will go wrong if you fail, and then you decide if you want to revise what you're trying to do, and the process repeats until we've got a finalized plan, and then we roll and execute it. Now, this is an interesting point. The rulebook is unclear about this and leaves some of the structure open to interpretation. The example of play, which 1 is hilarious and 2 is very helpful, shows a version of the game where there's no initiative order like in D&D, and the beastie just does what it wants to, and you kind of try to get out of the way or deal with it, and it only rolls for damage. It just mashes you if you don't succeed. But it would be totally possible for you to do a much more typical round where everyone has a turn, the monster has a turn, and it rolls its combat stat to see if it gets you. The game recommends using a speed check to decide initiative order if this is the case, but frankly, I find that the monster being super threatening really feeds into the juice of this game. Your players might encounter something else that is not quite as threatening, and that might feel like it needs an initiative order instead. Play your way, and you'll figure out what works for you and for your table. Now, if the baddie surprises you, you have to make a fear save. If you succeed, you can react. If you fail, you're too Pikachu shocked face to do anything, and you take a point of stress. Fun! Now, the game does mention that Mothership's combat scenarios are not properly balanced. They are intended to be insanely difficult, and they will require you to think outside of the box, to use your character's skills and the situation that you're in to your best advantage. The most impactful moments in Alien are never when a gun is firing. They are often as simple and as deadly as opening the wrong door at the wrong time. See example A. And example B. Ooh. But you are probably going to want to do damage, and you're definitely going to want to take damage. So let's talk about damage, armor, and wounds. To do damage, generally, you roll your combat. If you're successful, you roll your weapons damage, and the total will be taken away from the enemy's health. Simple, but that can happen to you too. And when that happens, you subtract the amount that you've gotten hurt from your health. When you're at 0 health, you gain a wound. You roll on the wounds table and take whatever the result is. Then you reset your health to its maximum, and you then lose any carryover damage from your new health. However, armor stands a bit in the way of this process. You ignore all damage that is less than your armor points. But if you ever take damage that is greater than your armor points, it shreds the armor. And in addition, some weapons are anti-armor, and they ignore armor and destroy armor whenever they hit someone wearing it. Some really good armor may have damage reduction, which always reduces damage, even if the armor has been destroyed or if the attacking weapon is anti-armor. In addition, cover can provide even more armor in a very impactful way. But just like armor, it breaks if it takes excessive damage, and it can only usually be used to defend against ranged attacks. In addition, if you shoot from behind cover, you are no longer in cover. Let's go back to wounds, though. There's some details about wounds that I want to go over. For one, the game has multiple different kinds of wounds, and 2, plenty of them apply conditions that give disadvantages on checks or take off limbs or apply bleeding. We'll learn more about bleeding in survival. There are different levels of severity to wounds, and I love that the game is very clear that you should probably use common sense as a guide to keep the story immersive and engaging when deciding what wound you take when stuff gets real bad. But if you take enough wounds, you will face death. If you take your maximum number of wounds, or if something happens that is just gonna end you outright, make it count. Save someone. Solve something. Buy some time. You need to make your last moments mean something. Make them impactful. They will probably be the best part of the game. Then, take a D10, put it in a cup or something cup-ish, shake it, and slam it down on the table. It remains there, covered up and unseen until one of your coworkers goes over and checks the body to see what state you are actually in. Usually, you're dead. Sometimes, it's worse than dead. Sometimes, you're still alive. But before you get that far and start rolling death saves, you should probably try some medical care. So once per day, while you are resting for 6 hours or more, you can make a body save. If you succeed, set your health to maximum. You do not recover wounds in this way. You're not going to grow back your hand just because you took a nap. In order to fix wounds, conditions, or losses to stats or saves, such as from gaining more than 20 stress, you will need some long-term care. The book gives some fantastic options for medical treatment, from recovering sanity in a therapist's office to getting pseudo-flesh injected into your body to heal back some of that lost capability, but Wardens have fun coming up with creepy, awful ways to make your players get better after they've gotten worse. But before we go any further, let me plug myself for a second. Please like the video if you're enjoying this, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you get notifications when more of this stuff comes out. And if you're enjoying this, throw me your favorite space emoji in the comments. Engagement really helps get more people just like you to see the video, and that means more Mothership players, which means more opportunities to play Mothership. It's just cascading good on good. All right, let's jump back in. Let's talk about range and distance. The game uses a simple and abstract range system that I think is just lovely. If something is adjacent to you, it can touch you. Close things can get to you. Things at long range can be shot. And things at extreme range, you can hear scream. Simple. Generally, you can move to something that's in close range and then do something pretty simple, like hit it with a monkey wrench. Or if you spend your whole turn running, you can get to something in long range. Anything more specific or arbitrary than that will be, well, arbitrated by the Warden. Let's talk about survival, aka the ways that I can kill you without a monster even attacking you. Space is the single most dangerous environment to the human body. Here are some ways that it can kill you and how it will work in the game. Atmospheres. Without the proper gear, even the air can kill you. A toxic atmosphere will do 1d10 damage to you per round. You can make a body save to half it. A corrosive atmosphere will do damage to you each round from 1 to 10 flat, depending on how nasty the atmosphere is. Bleeding. Remember this one? When bleeding, you take 1 damage each round until it is stopped. The condition is cumulative, so if you have bleeding 1 and you take bleeding 2, you now have bleeding 3 and take 3 damage each round. That's simple bleeding math. Cryosickness. This is so fraggin' rude. Sleeping for weeks sucks, but waking up from a Rip Van Napo sucks even more. After waking up from cryosleep, you take disadvantage on all rolls for 1 whole week. In order to mitigate this, the game suggests that you take a stim pack. A stim pack instantly clears this condition, but stim packs are also the easiest ways to heal, giving you 1d10 of health and advantage on all rolls for 1d10 minutes. But it's also crazy easy to overdose on stim packs. Every time you stim, you roll a d10, and if you roll under the amount of doses that you've had in the past 24 hours, death save. Brutal. Exhaustion. After 12 hours of doing stuff, you have to make a body save every hour. If you fail, you take a stress and a damage. After 24 hours of doing stuff with no sleep, you start to take disadvantage on those saves. Food and water. After 24 hours without food, disadvantage on everything. If water is scarce and you're tracking it closely enough to look up on Google how much water can humans survive on, you're taking disadvantage on everything. Oxygen. In space, a human can last for 15 seconds without oxygen before passing out. I don't know if that's like a known thing, but that is horrifying. After that, you can survive for 1d5 minutes before dying. There's also like a whole half page of rules about if life support on your ship fails. You're probably better off just reading that yourself. Or comment if you really want that ship video and I'll put it in there. Radiation is deadly. Surprise! There are 3 levels of radiation. Level 1 is trace. It does nothing except for in the long term. Fun. Level 2 is acute, and you reduce all your stats by 1 for every round that you were affected by level 2 radiation. That's permanent. Level 3 is lethal. Each round, you make a body save, or you take a lethal dose, which will kill you in 1d5 days. Crunch. Finally, temperature. The book gives no rules that are specific about this, but the effects of extreme temperature on the human body are well documented. Google it if you need to figure out what happens. Everything is deadly. What are the rewards for surviving? Let's talk about improving your character. Well, other than picking up that sweet, sweet company paycheck with hazard pay, you can also get better in 2 ways. The first is to train a skill, which costs money and time. A lot of time. The game kind of suggests that you can set a character aside to go like train and roll up another one to hang out in the meantime. I think that's really cool. It specifically suggests that you can join the Marine Corps to get military training, which really makes me giggle. In addition, if your character makes it back to a port, that is a big if, but if they do it and they get some real time off, they can take shore leave. When you take shore leave, you pay the cost depending on what type of port you're at, as you pay for your choice of relaxation depending on what's available, right? And then you make a sanity save. If you succeed, you convert some of that hard-earned stress into better saves. The amount is dependent on what type of port you're at. The most effective are Class X ports, which are hives of scum and villainy, and Class S ports, which are pleasure barges for the 1%. The conversion is 1 stress to 1 point of save. And you can decide how those improvements get split up. If you critically succeed, you convert the maximum amount. But if you fail, you don't convert any and you gain another point of stress. If you critically fail, things get real bad and you make a panic check on your day off. That is so relatable. Oh my God, tell me what every Sunday feels like without telling me what every Sunday feels like. Okay, so that is a lot of doom and gloom, but fortunately, you aren't alone. You also have contractors and pets. Come here. Yeah, come on. Will you be my mothership pet? Okay. Pets you can buy, but they also can be rolled up as starting gear. Like you, pets have health and wounds, but unlike you, they have an instinct score. This is a catch-all for their stats and saves. It's basically how capable they are. They only roll their instinct when they have to make a stat check or a save. In addition, pets have skills. Now, Reddit just absolutely exploded about this because your cat can be trained in explosives, and that seems a little bit weird. So I say have fun with this, right? It's one of the sillier parts of the game. Or maybe even better, use your imagination to figure out how this might make sense. I mean, a dog who is trained in chemistry might be a drug dog and might have a nose for noxious and legal chemicals. I think that's kind of cool. Pets also give you a bonus on rest saves because there is nothing like cozying up with your special little guy, right, Tupac? At least for you. Who knows how they feel? However, pets also come with a risk. We love them, and we hate to see them hurt. When your pet gets injured, It causes stress, and when they get killed, it has even worse effects. All right, you did a great job. You're done. Yeah, let's talk about contractors. Your new Employee of the Month. Contractors are a great way to make sure that your character doesn't have to be the one to kick down the door of the alien hive, but they can watch, water bottle or scotch in hand from the safety of the APC, watching the action through body cameras. They also make a great source of backup characters. Contractors come with a couple different stats that you have to keep track of. They have a combat stat, which works just like your combat stat, but everything else, like all the other saves and stats, are just covered by instinct, just like your pets. They also have a maximum wounds. In the rules as written, anytime a contractor takes damage, it counts as a wound. But this would be easy to adjust and give them a health score if you wanted them to be a little bit more durable in your game. Interestingly, they also have a loyalty, which is unique to contractors. It's a save that they make whenever they have to make a choice about what is best for them and what is best for you. So if they succeed, they help you, but if they fail, maybe they cut and run, doing whatever would be best for them. And finally, they have their motivation. Contractors will always choose their motivation over you, no matter how much you pay them. Contractors have a monthly salary, and all of their stats can be rolled up on this handy-dandy table, except for loyalty, which is always 2d10 plus 10 to begin with. But you can also increase your contractor's loyalty over time. If they survive a job, their loyalty goes up by 1, and if you save their life, or maybe you split a big payday with them, you might gain even more. Now, like players, contractors can roll a loadout when they're created, or the warden might say that they have whatever basic tools they would have for their occupation. That's it. That's all the rules. But there's one last part, and it's maybe the most important one, but it's also the most amorphous. How to be a great player in a game of Mothership. Now, people have written books about the subject of how to be a great player. People have made whole YouTube channels dedicated to answering that question, so we're just going to scrape the surface right now. But most of being a good player is setting clear expectations and knowing how to behave. So let's set a little bit of that right now for Mothership. You should expect characters to die. The game is deadly. You should play smart, you should play safe, you should make the most of the small time that you have in space. You should play hard, but also know what genre you're in. I mean, winning is never the goal of TTRPGs. It's telling a good story. Everything your character does should be in service of that, and sometimes that means being super smart and throwing the beast out of the airlock at the last second. And sometimes that means touching the slick egg in the crashed alien spaceship. Or saying, oh, we shot it so many times, I'm sure it's dead, and then kicking it. Balance smart play with fun play. You should also expect violence to be quick and deadly. And when it's not deadly, it is crippling. Avoid it at all costs. I mean, it's gonna happen, but this is not D&D where you charge in and you win the day. This is Alien. You are prey. The dice don't like you. The odds in this game are against you. The game is designed to represent your character's capabilities on the worst day of their lives. You should work to even those odds as best as you can with clever play and outside-the-box thinking. But also, your death is going to be your favorite part of the game. It's the most exciting. It's when the tension is the highest. It is a central part of the game. Welcome death when it comes. But you will always have to make hard choices. Save, solve, survive. You can only choose one. But pay attention. Mothership is primarily an investigation game. If you miss the clues, you miss the clues. In addition, your focus is going to be contagious, and your fixation on the Warden's growing tension that they're building slowly will get your other friends focused on it, and that just makes it all that much more intense and communal. Play the game together and pay attention to it. And finally, this is the most important one, maintain a safe play environment. Horror games are scary, and not everyone likes every kind of scary. It's everyone's responsibility to make sure that everyone else is comfortable. Don't be rude. And that's it. Okay, thank you for watching. If you're not done with me and you want some more Mothership, I did make a pretty long video about the Warden's Guide, and some people had some really nice things to say about it. So you can find that video here. Zap. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please check out my Patreon, patreon.com/milesawaygames. It is the surest way to support this channel. It's the only way that I get to take the time to make these videos. So thank you so much to my patrons. I appreciate it so much. Also, you can follow my Patreon for free, and then you'll get all the updates about when I release a new video. Don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe, hit that notification bell if you haven't done it already, and please comment content you want, games you want me to look at, other things you're curious about, and also things that I missed or messed up. I've never done a how-to video. Help me make this one better in the comments. Thanks again for watching to the end. I appreciate it so much. Stay miles away from boredom, and I'll see you next time.